Hello techies, I'm Divya here. On behalf of CyberBrainer, don't you think the world of tech is evolving faster than ever? Now is the perfect time to dive in and build the skills that will take you places. With CyberBrainer, we are putting you in the driver's seat of your own future. We at CyberBrainer don't just teach your interest. We believe that knowledge is power, but it's applied knowledge that truly sets you apart. Whether you're diving into data science, mastering artificial intelligence, or exploring the world of cybersecurity, our courses are designed to give you the skills that matter. So let's jump into the session and make the future yours today. Thank you.
Business process security policies, role-based security policies, and user-based security groups. Just to give you a recap, we saw about role-based in the first place and role-based security groups, as you all know, can be assigned at different organizations level, which is company cost center locations and supervisors, supervisory higher organizations. And then my roles are going to be assigned to a position or to a user. And as far as security groups are concerned, we have currently seen only two types of security groups. One is role-based and user-based. There are other types of security groups as well, but I do not want to go into that at this moment. For now, just remember only role-based and user-based security groups, which should be sufficient for you at a foundation level. If you go more into it, it's going to be more confusing to you. And next thing, we have seen about business process security policies, and we have also seen how that is going to be tied to a role-based security group where you can do the mapping and how this actually works. We have seen about business process security's part. The next topic that we are going to be seeing is domain security policies and functional areas domains, subdomains. That is going to be predominantly the topic that we are going to be seeing over today. That's the agenda for today. And like I said, I have just been going through all of this. I have been trying to do as much as I can. That's why you see a lot of windows open on my tenant. Actually, I was just trying to go over all the higher and other business processes as well, trying to see how I can adjust the proxy policies and everything. There are lots of proxy policies which were just actually not allowing us to have more people as proxy. That's why. Alright, let me come out of proxy. Let me just go in as Karoli. And I think the idea of Terasa on chat. You can use Terasa's ID for any kind of proxying as well. We have 3 IDs right now. Probably map it accordingly as per your business needs for any rules or assignments that you're going to be doing. Like I said earlier, first we saw about business process security policy. What exactly business process security policy deals with is whenever I have a business process, something like changing the details of an employee, which we call it as change of business process. I could hire somebody, I could terminate somebody, I can have a compensation change for somebody. For all of these business processes, I can have an event and I can decide who can do what in that particular event. That is what is called as a business process security policy. That is number 1. Second, if I come across to the other type of business or the other type of security policy, it is called as domain security policy. Domain security policy is nothing but what you see on this page are actions and everything else. Whatever information that you see on this page is controlled by a domain. It's controlled by a domain. Like I said yesterday, first up when I go to Karoli's compensation, relevant information, this particular compensation should not be seen by everybody. Only specific users with appropriate access should be able to see the compensation information because this is considered to be highly confidential. Probably your manager or people who deal with the compensation and the payroll support structure of the organization can see this. In order to control all of this, we have something called as domain security policies. Clear thus far? What is the purpose of a domain security policy? Any questions over here? Sorry, I thought I heard somebody. Alright, now in order to access domains, I don't know why it's not coming out of proxy here. Alright, now let me just open the domain specific to the employee's compensation and we will proceed from there. Yesterday we saw about how the business process policy is going to be looking like. The business process policy is going to decide who can do what in a business process event. In any event, we can decide who can do what. Whereas your domain security policy is going to decide who can see what information and do what task. That's what your domain is going to be. For example, let me go to the employee compensation information and I will proceed on with this particular specific domain for care release compensation. What I do in the search is, I just put it like domain. As you all know, domain is going to be the prefix for any employee. Sorry, domain prefix is the prefix for any. Sorry, domain is specifically the prefix to view any domain-specific information. And then I put over here as employee compensation. I don't have that specific domain. Compensation change. Worker compensation. Let me check if I have worker compensation details. Worker data compensation. Let me just put all of these information that it's easy for you. I can show everything. Alright. What I do is, instead of putting not employee into employee compensation, I just put over here as worker compensation. I prefix it by the domain, which is the keyword to view any domain-specific details. I say domain worker compensation. I get many different domains. All of these are going to control every single information that you see here. For example, compensation can be viewed by the compensation teams and then the employee stock portfolio. If the employee is eligible for ESOPs, then he should be able to view the employee stock information. And if the employer, particular person does not have the information, does not have the privileges to view them, then they should not be able to view the employee stock portfolio. Alright? Now, if I go across to all of these domains are going to control who can see what information in my employees page. Alright. Now, I'm just opening the second one over here, which says worker data compensation. Worker data compensation is one of my domains that I'm going to be choosing. And if you see over here, this domain is going to control or it is going to contain all the details about the compensation information of any worker. Any worker. This domain is going to contain and also control who can view what compensation information for any worker. Alright. That is number 1. Number 2, if you see over here, every domain is going to belong to something called as a functional area. And we have different functional areas in Workday or by functional areas. You can assume it's something like a module kind of a thing. This particular information is related to core compensation. Likewise, we have many other functional areas which could be like recruiting, onboarding, payroll, absence, time tracking. We have many different functional areas. Each of these functional areas is in a nutshell. You can see a collection of domains or in an easily accessible or an easily understandable terminology. I can say module level information that you want to have it at a macro level and a macro level. All of this is core compensation, relevant information. Alright. And why do we have functional areas over this? Functional areas are going to be any security or any configuration that I want to do. I can also do it at a functional area level. For example, let me open the functional area of core compensation. If you see, this particular core compensation functional area is going to contain multiple domains over there. And it may have many business processes. Remember, in the business process, if you see at the top, each business process will have something called as functional area. Why we have this is I can have the same business process triggered from multiple places. For example, when I'm doing a performance review for any employee, I can have a compensation change, which means that particular compensation change business process is going to be part of the talent functional area. And apart from that, I can have the same compensation change business process also initiated as a part of my compensation change, which is the compensation functional area. I can have the same thing triggered, or I can have two different instances triggered from multiple areas. Functional areas are a way of segregating your entire Workday HCM system into module-specific areas or values. In a nutshell, that's what it is. Clear on what is a functional area? Functional area is nothing but which functional side of things that you are going to be actually operating out of. That is number 1. See, all of these business processes or domains that you see is more in the compensation relevant area. And I put all of these domains in a compensation package. And to explain you a little bit more actually, was it Tamimi who asked this question? Now when I go for any HCM implementation, what happens is a client may implement one or more modules or one or more areas. Some clients may use Workday only for core HCM, which is to manage their day-to-day HCM operations. And they may have the payroll outsourced. For example, in your own organization that you might be currently working, payroll may be outsourced with a third-party vendor instead of having it maintained in Workday itself. Which is, you could be accessing a system like a Ceridian or an ADP or other systems to access your payroll information. In which case, what we do is when a client is going to be working or is going to be actually buying products out there, we are going to be saying that we are going to be implementing or we are going to be buying products based on the functional area that I'm going to be doing. These are specifically only modules. Now we are seeing about core HCM, which is our course right now. That is a foundation module for any HCM implementation. We have other areas like compensation payroll. Payroll is functional area is going to contain all the business processes plus domains which are specific to the payroll relevant area. Basically, this is nothing but the information relevant to that particular area that we are going to be seeing. For example, this is related to compensation, and we are going to be seeing only the compensation relevant domains and business processes over here right now. We're not going to be seeing anything else outside of compensation and payroll. That's what a functional area is. When we go for any implementation of the client, it's going to be actually having more number of products added or reduced from time to time. You will be operating out of the functional area, which means they may say that from tomorrow onwards. I'm going to be actually saying that core composition is going to become redundant. I can manage it from another third-party vendor or third-party system. I could say recruiting is going to be becoming redundant. I can say payroll is going to become redundant. I can do anything and everything that I would like to do. Right? Clear on this. Clear on what exactly is the purpose. Everybody is functional area clear. Any questions over there? Alright? Like I said, functional area is nothing but a module, specific one, and I can have different domains and business processes. I can have a collection of domains and business processes in my functional area. And that is why we divide each and every Workday or each and every HCM module into functional areas. Alright? That is number one. Number two. When I go across to my domain, I have several things over here. First is going to be the domain description. And most important of all is going to be your domain security policy, which we'll be seeing next. And we also have functional areas where we have seen what is a functional area this particular domain is going to belong to. And I also have subdomains. Alright. For example, if I read some of these subdomains. Here, I have seen that this is worker data compensation, but I can have subdomains over here. The purpose of all of these subdomains is, if I go across to my worker profile, I have total rewards, compensation pay, change history, reinvestment, 11 plans, stock portfolios, everything else. I'm going to be splitting all of these into smaller units. That is where all of these comes in. Because I can have one entire policy for the entire compensation information. But at a micro level, I can also control who can view what information at a micro level. For example, like I said earlier, just the stock portfolio alone can be hidden from certain people. And again, pay change history. Like I said, domains are nothing, going to be smaller chunks of information. This entire compensation that we see over here, you can just assume this to be an entire domain and subdomains going to be all of this information. Your compensation packages, grid profiles assignments, your basis pay, your pay change history, stock options, rewards. All of these can be subdomains in your employee or worker compensation domain. Clear on this? If you see over here, I have pay range plan, type grades, partner organization, much of information. All of this is relevant to this particular smaller chunks of information, and each one can be controlled separately. Which means at a macro level, I will say everybody in a source. For example, if I have an L1 support desk, your HCM support desk, L1 support desk team. Whenever you call the call center up and say that I do not have a compensation or I have some issues with my compensation for the current month of September, probably not received your pay for this month or something like that. What will happen is they will go and see all of this information and see whether there is any issue over there. And it is not necessary for the same compensation team to also see the stock options or the reimbursement allowances. Because you could have some reimbursable allowances, like an internet or something like a mobile bill or something of that sort, or your communication allowance. All of this could be part of your reinvestment allowance. But you can have different teams taking care of different functionalities. I will have one domain across the board for compensation and subdomains to actually take care of all of these. And the way domains and subdomains are going to work is anybody's guess inheritance. The same inheritance will also apply in compensation domain and the subdomains across the board for all the subdomains. This is how it works. If you're going to have any inherited permissions, that is also going to be inherited unless you choose to override it. If you are going to have the same domain subdomain, you're going to have inheritance in terms of security privileges as well. That is number one in terms of whatever domain subdomain is concerned. If I go to the next one, in terms of report fields and everything, I would say this is more related to the reporting section, which we are going to be seeing probably in the next or the following week. What is the access to all the information that we have as a part of the particular domain, and which field can be accessed by whom? That is what this particular report field is going to say. Alright. Now, the most important thing that we are going to be covering over here is called as domain security policies. Like I said, domain security policy is ideally going to be deciding who can access what information that is available over here. What I do is first, I've shown you about the domain worker data compensation. Now I'm going across to domain security policy. I just click on this particular lens over here, a magnifying lens that is available over here, and it takes me to the domain security policy. And give me just 1 minute. I'm just going to be going across to one of the screens that we saw yesterday. That I can just probably, I could have a correlation between the two. I'm just going across to the security group, which we saw yesterday, which is manager. Alright. Yesterday we saw in detail about all the privileges which the manager is going to have, either at a domain policy level or a business process level, and all the other usages as well. Now ignore the warnings, just there. Now I'm going across to domain policy and I'm filtering the domain policy called as compensation. Let me put worker compensation. If they have worker compensation, worker data compensation. Alright. I'm just putting over here worker data compensation just to show you all of this. Number 1 and number 2. We also have domain security policies, inheriting permission, which means worker data compensation is actually or the other way around. The domain security policies which are going to be inheriting is the worker data compensation manager and market position details domains is going to be inheriting the permissions from worker data compensation domain. And all of this is part of the functional area called as work or compensation. And this is what I would be. Now what I'm just doing is now I'm going across to the domain security policy, worker data compensation, and I'm just going to be filtering it by manager. I'm filtering it by manager. Why I'm filtering it? Because I just want to have both of them shown together. When I clicked on manager, Why is it picking something else? Why is it picking this? Leave it. You know it's not working properly. I don't know why. That filter went a little bit topsy. It wasn't good. They made some changes over here. The same worker data compensation over here. But why is it not coming properly? Just give me 1 second. Just clubbed into a group here. All these 37 rows, they've just clubbed it into a single group. I understood what they've done over there. Alright. What I do right now is I just choose this particular row. Just ignore the header over there because they have actually clubbed multiple security groups into a single row over here. That is how this is actually designed. And here what I do is I go to Manager Security Group. If you see, the Manager Security Group in my compensation domain has only view access and not modify access. And there are certain groups over here as well which have both view as well as modify access. Now I just come back over to the worker profile. What exactly could that view and modify access mean? Ideally, any guesses? Read only with the view. And again, modify is going to be not directly over here and then going and changing it over here. It is changing it via the relevant business processes in your relevant business processes. You are going to be initiating this, and unless and otherwise you have the modify access to probably change your compensation base scale. You will not be able to do it in the business process level as well. Alright, say for example, I'm going to have a manager who is initiating a compensation change for one of his subordinates. Number 1, he should have access to the change job business process. Number 2, he should have access to view and modify the compensation information for an employee. These are the two things which are going to drive any event or anything that is happening. It is not necessary for him to just have the permission to run or initiate that particular business process. But if a manager is going to be actually changing the compensation for an employee or a subordinate, he should have access to both view as well as to modify the compensation information of an employee. Otherwise, it is not going to work. Are you guys with me? Any questions? Seems to be a silent day today. Everybody's domain policy. What exactly happens in a domain security policy? Is that clear? Any questions over there? And what exactly a view and what exactly modify means here? If I go to the manager security group over here, which I have, and I filter by the domain security policy of worker data compensation, I see only view operation only, which means the manager can only view the information at this moment, which is, again, this is at a domain level of worker data compensation. And I can also have some permissions at a subdomain level, which is for the individual fields. Right? That is number one. And now second question, which I think you might pop up to you is, you have Carol Lee, Joy Banks, Logan McNeil. All of them are part of the manager groups, but they can also initiate a change of and a change compensation transaction. How is that possible? That is because Carol Lee is also part of another security group, which is Implementer Security Group, which has view and modify. Carol Lee is part of either of these security groups. AR people, because there are many security groups over here. And Carol Lee is part of one or more of these security groups, and also possibly an admin level security group. And hence Carol Lee or Joy Banks or Teresa or Logan McNeil can perform both view as well as modify of the compensation information. You need to understand two things. One business process is going to be driving who can initiate an action. Who can initiate an action? We've had several instances in the past from my own experience as well. I'll tell you what will happen is you might initiate a compensation, information or a job change transaction, say for Carol Lee. Now, this is what is a real world scenario. And probably when you go for an interview, this is what one of your interviewers could ask you. You may initiate a job change transaction to actually change the compensation information because you as manager may have the privileges to it. But when you go into the compensation screen, everything will look blank. You will have no compensation information to actually edit. And because you will have access to initiate the transaction, but you may not have the domain privileges to view and also edit the information in your domain security policy. This is very important that you understand what exactly drives what. For example, first let me take the case of manager does not have the view of access or modify access. Manager does not have both view and modify access, but he still tries to initiate a compensation change for, say, Carol Lee. What will happen is the compensation change screen will come up because he has the initiate privileges, but he will see blank and he will just go ahead and submit it. Which means it does not mean that the compensation is going to become zero in the back end. It is just that he does not have any privileges. And if the approver has the view say, the approval goes to a compensation partner. Compensation partner may have view backs. He will see that probably Carol Lee was getting the 80,000 a year previously. Now also it is submitted only as 80,000 and there is no other transaction that has happened over there. And why is it coming for me to approve it? And he will send it back again to the manager. That is possibly what could happen. That is scenario number one. Scenario number two. I say that manager only has a view of access, but no modify access. In that case, the transaction for compensation change or job change transaction will initiate. And the manager will have this particular screen where he can go and propose a new compensation, but he will not have edit privileges. It will be read-only. It will be read-only. Let me open Carol Lee's profile and view domain security policies. And we have something called as edit domain security policies, which we are going to be seeing next. Now see, here I'm just going to be having a start job change for dial and share and say I'm going to say what are the actions that I have. I'm just going to say, or I'm just going to say combination of changes. And I'm doing this as Carolee, and I'm doing this to dial and show. And I'm saying a start job change transaction, and I want this to be taken into effect, or this should be effective immediately. Alright, I'm saying this is effective immediately, right now, and I'm saying start now. Let me come to the compensation or relevant information for this employee. Alright. Let's see here. This person currently has whatever. Ignore all of this information that is available over here in terms of what is the salary range and everything. I'll go to salary range. Let's see. This particular person currently has a salary. Imagine remove. Ignore all of this. Remove comments and everything over here. Currently this person has a salary of 75 to 37 pounds a year. Now if as a manager, I do not have access to edit this information, I will not get anything over here called add. I will not get anything called add over here. It will only be viewing the current information of the employee's compensation, even though I'm trying to initiate a compensation change transaction. Clear on this? What will happen ideally over there? You will not have access to edit it. You will only have view access if you are trying to view. I'm randomly picking a compensation plan over there, and all of this will not be available. You will not be able to add anything. You will not be able to do anything at all. You will only be able to view it, and you're just going to be submitting it. That is a real world scenario. What could possibly happen? And in one of your interview questions, let me ask you that what is going to be or what is happening in your domain security policy and what drives your domain security policy. Your data is going to be driven by your domain security policies, whereas your actions. What is the action that you are going to be doing in your business process is going to be driven by your P security policy. Alright, that is one clear on this far. Far as this clears on the view part of domain security policy, is it all clear? The P is going to drive your actions in any business process policy. Who can initiate a transaction? Who can actually approve something? And obviously, when you are going to be approving something, you need to see some data in order to approve. Say, for a compensation partner, if he is going to be approving something, he needs to have the view access of the compensation information. Otherwise, in the approval page, it is going to show us blank. It is going to show blank plain talk. I'll show you that as well. Alright, let me go to Carolee's inbox. Or I'd say, let me say higher. For example, let me say higher information. I'm just picking, probably because higher, which was initiated probably yesterday. Now higher. This particular information for higher is driven by much of many domains, many other domains interlinked with one another, including the worker data, personal information, compensation information, many other stuff. Or let me pick, this is getting reassigned. Since this is getting reassigned, let me try to have another one. I will pick something which is not having the reassignment or any approvals. Compensation change. Let me pick this compensation change. Since it might have an approval also, let me pick this. Let's see. I don't have any of this. All these come in over here. Alright. See, I don't want to waste more of time over here because it's getting a lot of issues. Just imagine over here that when you come over here to this particular task, you will get blank information over here for an employee. For example, if I go to Pravalika or move to this particular new manager over here, the screen will look blank, where the compensation information should be available. And your compensation partner, when he's trying to approve something, what will happen? It will show blank, and in a nutshell, the compensation partner will raise a request or a service now ticket saying that what am I going to approve? I don't know what I'm going to be approving. I do not have the access to view this particular person's information. What am I going to actually approve? That is what the compensation partner will say. Clear on this? Any questions? I'm not able to see or give you an exact example over there. Probably I'll cook up something today and I'll show you that tomorrow as well. Probably a compensation information. Now that we have 3 or 4 folks, I'll try to have that compensation information and show you what exactly will happen. Alright. That is ideally what will happen if you only have a view access or if you do not have a view access. And again, if you are going to have modify access, it also means that you will also have view access. I'll go to that now. What I'm going to do right now is we have seen about how to view your domain security policies. We are going to be seeing next how I can edit my domain security policy for that. I go to the related actions of domain security policy. Domain security policy. And I have many options over here. Number 1, or I'll go from the bottom. First one is view history, which is going to give me any kind of an audit related history of any changes which has happened in this particular domain security policy. Next, the domain, the previous screen which we saw the domain relevant to this particular domain sec policy. Third, one view, all for functional area, which means for this particular functional area, what all the view, all permissions which are available. Next, if I want to disable the entire domain security policy, which means, for example, for my ESOP options, right? This particular employee stocks portfolio. For example, your organization does not have employee stock portfolio at all. Why should I have this particular information visible? And this visibility is not only over here in the employee profile. This employee stock profile could be visible at multiple levels and areas as well. I'm going to make this entirely disabled, that it's not going to be available anywhere at all. I'm going to be making this entirely disabled. That is the fourth option which we have. And the fifth one is the one that we've got to see now next, which is called as editing my permissions, right? When I go to edit my permissions, all of the information that we saw over here, it is available. And I can have multiple rows over here. And in one row, I can pick many different security groups as well in a single row, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to group all of these 50 or 60 ordered security groups with only a view permission over here. That's what I'm trying to do over here. And for example, I created one role-based security group yesterday. I think it was called test re-enroll or something. Let me try to put it over here. Say I created test run role 1 yesterday. This is the one I created yesterday. This is the one I created yesterday. What I'm trying to do is for the compensation information, the security group which I created yesterday. I'm going to give a view or a modified access over here that any person who's assigned to test Ryan role 1 security group can have either a view or a modified access as per what I'm going to decide right now. And one thing first, I can have either view or the moment I'm going to check. Modify view is going to be automatically checked. And I can have view and modify or just view only. That is because if you are going to have a modified access, view is automatically taken into consideration, which means view is automatically taken. That is not going to be any kind of an access which is going to prevent you. Workday has an intelligent system which is going to say, I'm going to be modifying something without viewing access. What am I going to modify? It is going to be automatically available. This is kind of an implicit action which happens over there. In a real world, when you go to a client implementation, all this is going to be done by people called as security admins. Only they will have privileges to actually play around with your domains. Nobody else. Only your security admins, based on policies, approvers and everything, will say that, say, I have a manager, I have a compensation partner or anybody will be able to view this. And again, the compensation partner will be able to see only compensation information. They will not be able to see payroll information or absence information. And your absence partner will be able to see only absence information and not payroll information or compensation information. That is why we have separate domains, separate functional areas. Now does it all make sense to you? Where exactly functional areas, domains, subdomains, all of this comes in. From a supervised organization to a security group, how that is going to be assigned, and how you are going to tie it back to your business process and your security group, and how you can play around with this. Clear thus far? Any questions, Steve? Alright. Now, I'm not going to play around with this because I do not want to accidentally turn on anything. I'm just going to cancel what we have made changes over here. But this is the way you can do any view or modify, or you can add a security group to the view or modify. And if you want to play around with this, you can definitely play around. But subject to ensure that you do not accidentally, even accidentally, change existing permissions. Add a new row over there and put in your own security group that you're going to create. Right. Either it will be role-based or user-based. Not an issue, but do it only for your own security group. Don't play with the existing ones. Alright. Security is directly assigned to the user. Now let me open a user-based security group. See, like I said, user-based security group is going to be directly assigned to a user. Now let me open a security group over here. Assign roles. See over here, let me say I have absence administrator right now. I open absence administrator over here and all that. If you see over here, it has domain sick policies, business policies, etc. And I see directly members. And if I want to add somebody over here to the user-based security group, and I say go to the user-based security group, user-based assigned security group, and say assign users, I just go directly to assign users over there. And I think it just came up. I just go directly over here. I come to user-based security group and I say assign users. For some reason it is actually, I go to the security profile and user-based security groups. I couldn't read it. The problem is in the relevant domain. I'll tell you what could have happened over here. This is a classic scenario which happens. A person could be part of multiple security groups, and one of those security groups will have a view access. Another one will have a view and a modify access. Get what I'm saying? That particular scenario that you saw right now where it is just kicking me out of assigning any user-based security group for that user-based assignment security groups. Sorry, user-based security group assignments. You do have specific domains that drive all of this. And Logan, sorry, Carol Lee could be part of one or more of these security groups, or probably two or more of those security groups. One of them could have just a view access. Another one could have a view and a modify access. It is getting into a conflict over there. That's what is happening. In a real world, you won't have that issue. In a real world, you won't have that issue. It is going to be the minimum of the security. But again, in that case, what is happening is it is like getting into a conflict. You can view it. Modify is not happening. That gets into a lot of, I would say, confusion and everything over there. Now that I have this, let me open Logan McNeil right now. If I want to view all the security groups which are assigned to Logan McNeil, all that I do is I go to security groups. I directly go to security groups, view security groups, and I will see all the other 800 items which are assigned to here. Today morning I went to Carol League. She had around 100 plus and Logan McNeil has 100 of them. And it's very difficult, for me to view each and everything. We should have everything. What is happening and where it is getting a conflict. It's kind of very difficult for us to actually. We've seen about this particular domain right now and what happens in the view and the modify privileges. And if you see, we have something called as securable actions and securable reporting items. Leave the reporting items for now. We'll deal with when we get to the reporting part. Now I'm going to be teaching only about securable actions. What you need to do is, if you see there are 17 securable actions over here, and I'm just going to be clicking directly on the number that is available over here. Say you just need to tie this down with the appropriate view and modify, and Workday has drawn this particular action based on, say, for this particular domain. It is going to control a variety of actions which are there over here. Alright, and there are certain things which are called as reports. Ignore those reports for now. This one has only reports. I'll go to the subdomain. That's easier for a child policy. Let me say pay range because that would be a little bit confusing. Pay range is going to be nothing but the employees. Great profiles. Pay range which is eligible. What I'm doing is I'm going to that particular security policy. And we have the security groups which have all the relevant permissions and everything. And if you see, the parent policy is going to be worker data compensation. Now I click on securable actions over here. This is also a report. Pay range for compensation for managers. This seems to be more relevant. Because since I have not touched on reporting far, I don't want to go into the reporting security privileges. That's why I'm just going into the task level once. Let me see if I have some specific tasks for which I can show for you. Alright? See, this is nothing. But this particular domain is the domain worker data compensation for managers. And we have specific tasks which can actually be driven based on my view and modify accesses. I told you that your domain is going to contain data and certain tasks which are driven otherwise from a business process. From a business process standpoint, I can have the business process event controlled. Right. But apart from that, I also have certain tasks over here which is driven by my domain action policies or domain actionable that we call it over here. Or this is also a booklet. Give me a minute again. Just going across to the relevant one, which is going to be precise for you to view. This should be a lot better. The rewards and everything. Just give me 1 second. Several other things. Alright. If you see over here, apart from my business processes, we have certain things called tasks, and certain tasks are going to be directly driven from my business process policy. So, domain security policy, not the business process policy. Now see here. Not all of these that you see over here in this particular menu for relevant actions are driven by business processes. Because certain things are driven by tasks as well. Certain things are driven by tasks as well because I may not need a business process. Why I'm having a business processes is because when I want to go for some approval routing or I want to create a customized business process for them. And also I have certain tasks which can be directly performed by a manager. And also I could have certain tasks and report. For example, I go to organization and I go to view roles for this particular organization for Carolee, which means in the supervisory organization we saw all the roles which are at a super level. And I was able to filter down based on individual workers who are assigned a specific role. And now this is a reverse of that, which is role assignment for worker position. If I just click on this, this is going to give me all the roles that Carolee is assigned in a specific supervisory organization. And where this menu or this particular task, we call these as tasks. And where this task is being secured is from a domain level. Here, I have one task over here which is called as map retirement savings plan to a compensation basis. And this is again a task. And if I want somebody to be doing this particular task, then I need the modify privileges. A person with modify permission will be able to do this particular task. And this is not a business process, it's just a simple task which happens. Hope it's not confusing with your business process event. Business process event is different. Your task is going to be different. Right. We saw what assigning a role. Assign role to a user is a task in itself. It does not have any background business processes. For example, I go to Carly's profile and I see over here. Say I see assigned roles. Let me go to security profile. And I want to say assign user-based groups. This is assign user-based for person. Ignore that. It's a task by itself. And that task is secured to a domain, possibly a security domain. And this is how it is going to be coming. And a person who has a view or a modify based on what it's going to be there for that particular task will be able to perform that particular task. For example, in this worker data total compensation domain, if a person has a modify access, which is people operation A, B, C, let's not take that as inactive. Let's say people operation admin security group. Whoever is tagged to people operation admin security group will be able to do map retirement savings plan to compensation basis task. Whereas a person who is probably over here a compensation partner. Obviously, the compensation partner does not have a modify access and he only has a view access. And hence they will not be able to do map retirement savings plan to compensation basis task. Does that make sense? Is that clear? Any questions? For a data task, everything is driven from here only. From a domain, you're going to drive both a task. A task is, you can assume that it's a standalone activity that I'm going to be doing. It's just a standalone one. But as in a business process, I'm going to be doing it in a more holistic manner with approvals and routings and all these successor, ask and predecessor task and everything. That's more holistic in nature. Any questions here far on domain security policies? What exactly we've seen far? Domain security policies, functional areas, domains, subdomains and everything. Any questions from the team? You can edit anything. You can edit domains, subdomains and everything. You can edit anything. It is just that the subdomains are going to inherit the security policies from the parent policy. That's it. They are going to be inheriting, obviously, because it needs to inherit the permissions. That's all it is. Because, for example, in Carol Lee's profile, I may have the compensation information. And unless I have the date, all I have the permission to view the compensation information. I cannot view the information relevant to stock portfolios. I cannot view the pay change information or the reimbursement. I cannot view any of this information unless I have access to the parent domain. Oh, why am I not able to view any of these? Now it's available. See, earlier I was getting something over here and reinvestment allowance plans and everything. Somebody's made modifications over there. Unless I have access to the overall compensation domain, I cannot view total rewards, which is a child domain policy compensation tab, which is another domain policy or subdomain policy. And again, I have pay changes to all these subdomain policies and the relevant tasks over here. Everything is tagged to a domain policy. Unless I have access to my parent policy, I cannot view the child policies. That's all it is. Clear thus far? That is how it all rolls up and rolls down. Any questions? Security is kind of an elephant to digest. That's how it is. And in a real world, what I have, and I will be very, very honest with you, what I'm just teaching you right now is only 10% of what exactly a real world could look like. I'm trying to give you as much as information as possible, but in a real world, I'm giving you only more of the theory, plus a little bit of the functional expertise that I've gained over the last several years. But this is barely 10% compared to what you see in a real world. In a real world, it's going to be wacky talkies. That's, in one word, how it is going to be. You're going to be seeing many challenges, many things. X user, Y user is going to say, I'm not having this. And when you design all of this, it's going to be really, really difficult. Imagine that security administrator. The role of a security administrator is the most complex in any kind of implementation. And you wouldn't want to get into that particular shoes. That's what I would say. In the future, if you are going to go into a security administrator, I would say, God be with you, nothing else. And security, I know it's going to be very difficult for you at the start, but tomorrow I'm going to be revisiting all of this. And I've only taught you the basics of security. There is much more in security and all this conflict management right now. I taught you about the view and modify people having or people being in two security groups, but one lab view, and one will have modified how to actually circumvent all that. We have many ways to do that, but I don't want to get into that. Now just try to digest whatever we have seen today, and I will share this particular deck across with you right after this. Just try to go through this particular deck and try to understand what are the main policy, functional areas, subdomains, and all of this are. And try to first understand this picture and visualize this in your mind. You'll kind of get it. And tomorrow we will revisit this again because we've seen a lot, I know. But I will revisit this tomorrow and take some questions as well and see where we can proceed from there. But nice activity for you today. Go through. I will share this material across at least till slide number 3. Try to understand what is happening. And if you go scroll down also, it will only contain all of what we have seen far. It will contain the main security policies, business process policies, and everything else. And how a security group can be created. All of that is available. And I think Krishna Vini, this should be kind of relevant to you as well. The material. Just do go through this and let me know if something is not clear. Alright. This is more or less what we have seen today and other stuff as well. Tomorrow, what I'm going to be seeing is we have seen about constrained security group. If you guys feel comfortable, I will take unconstrained as well. But only if you guys want to go an extra, take an extra mile and learn about unconstrained, because unconstrained is a little bit confusing. That is why I don't know whether I want to go through that or not. But otherwise we will try to revisit security and we will take as many questions as we can tomorrow for security groups, because security groups is going to be definitely very, very important for you. And even if you go for an interview sometime in the future, this is going to be very important, especially the view and modify accesses. Just remember whatever I taught you today. That's going to be helpful for you, at least at the foundation level. And probably once you do 1 or 2 implementations, you will get a hang of things. But for now, just understand what exactly business process policy is, the security around business process policy, the domain policy is, and what drives what. And in a nutshell, all that you need to understand is security is concerned. If you're not able to understand what it is, just remember this. Who does what, and then try to look back and understand what exactly the domain or the business process policy does. You will understand it better. If you have that particular framework in your mind, if you have that particular thought running in the back of your mind, you will understand security easier. Just understand who does what and that will help you. Alright, clear on that. Any other questions? And I will share this particular document across with you today. And today again, we will be going through all of this tomorrow as well. Tomorrow we will see, this is whatever I have taught you for over the last 3-4 days. This is what is available in this particular deck as well. I will share this deck. Go across this. Go through this particular deck today and come with more questions. And if you are going to be playing around with the domain security policies, well and good. But do not change any existing policies which are there. Only make changes to your own new security policies or security groups that you're creating. Do not play up existing ones. Alright, please do like, share and subscribe to our channel.